Catherine Kemmler, and I'm the flute teacher here at Louisiana State University. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the 2 etudes that are required for this year's All-State Band auditions. In addition, there will be one of my students, Marley Eder, who is a first-year master's student, is going to perform both of these etudes in their entirety, and those will be on additional tracks. So I highly recommend that you listen to those because they will be a very good guide for you as you prepare these for your auditions. What I'm going to do today is to talk a little bit about some practice techniques you can use for learning these so that you can sound a little more like Marley when you play them. The first one I'm going to talk about is the slow etude in E minor by Fairling. It's by Franz Wilhelm Fairling. His dates go from 1796 to 1874, which puts him firmly in the Romantic period. And so you should play this etude as expressively as possible, and also you will be allowed to do a little bit of push and pull with the tempo, which I may explain a little bit about later. The tempo marking here, there's not a metronome marking given, but it says largo lagrimoso. Lagrimoso means plaintive, sad, melancholy, even tearful. And largo means very slow and dignified. So I would highly recommend that when you learn this, that you count this in 6 instead of in 3. Subdivide it so that you're counting the 8 notes instead of the quarter notes. And one of the reasons I feel strongly about this is because in the second line, the last bar, there are a large number of 30-second notes. And if you ever are playing a slow piece of music and there are a lot of 30-second notes in it, that usually is a good indication that the piece should be subdivided, at least in its earliest stages. So the tempo I would recommend for this would be somewhere between 80 and 88 to the 8th note. I'm going to put my metronome on 84, and I'm going to play the beginning. So notice that when I was playing this, I was really trying to lead towards the downbeat of each bar, because even though we're subdividing it, it's still in 3/4, and the first beat is very important. The only exceptions to that are the places where the downbeat is really at the end of the phrase. One of those places is what I just played, going into the 4th bar. You have this figure, and you want to not play it. You want to back off and think sort of like, I love you so. You want to make it sound romantic. The other thing that's difficult is in the 3rd bar, there are a lot of grace notes, and getting these grace notes right is really important. So, and a little bit tricky. So I'm going to play the bar first with no grace notes with the metronome. Take them all out. And so that's pretty easy. Now we're going to put in just the last grace note, the one right before the accented D, and it's going to go slightly before the beat, and I'm going to try to put the D right on the beat. So you can hear how I was putting the D on the beat. Now we're going to take that one out, and we're going to put in the 4 32nd note grace notes. Those 4 32nd notes are going to be played on the and of 4. Since we're counting in 8s, the first dotted quarter gets 3 beats, and the 4th beat would usually be the B, because it's an 8th note, but because we have to fit in all these grace notes, we're only going to play it, the first half of it, and the second half will be the 4 32nd note grace notes. I'm leaving out the little grace note at the end for now. Now, in order to put that little grace note back in, I have to almost imperceptibly play those 4 30-second grace notes just a teeny bit faster to get that extra grace note in, and try to get the D on the beat. And then we go on. Next we have a sequence. A sequence is when you have a group of notes that are repeated over and over again on successively higher or lower pitch levels. In this case, we're building, so each one gets a little bit louder. Think of it as step 1, step 2, step 3. Steps 1 and 2 will be very similar. Step 3 will be a little different because it goes into that bar of 30-second notes where it sort of explodes into activity. So that's how you do that. Be very careful in the bar with the 30-second notes. A lot of people forget that it goes back to 16th at the end, so they tend to play. But it's a lot easier if you play it the way it's written. The first 2 beats are just pretty much just chromatic. The second 2 beats are, if you take out every other note, it's like a scale. When you put them back in, still push on the top notes. It helps to make the line go up to the E a little bit more effectively. After this point, this is one of those places you can take a little extra time. And you have 4 Bs that are all 8th notes, and they're marked staccato, but please do not play them short. If you play, it's going to not be musical. So try thinking of them getting progressively longer as you play them. And get a big breath and stay soft. That D sharp trill is fingered with your D key here. You're fingering a D sharp is like an E flat. And because it's a little out of tune, if you play the first or 1 or 2 little wiggles going up to E natural and then back to this trill. You don't have to do that, but it'll make the trill sound a little better in tune. Also, please do not leave your first finger down because it sounds a little too much like a harmonic. And here we have a little tricky thing because you have a lot of large descending intervals. The G to the D sharp and the E to the B. And they want to crack, or at least bump. But we don't want it to sound like that. So if you think hee-haw, and think the high note down, the lower note up, and fill it in with air. See how smooth that can be? Another way of practicing that could be filling it in with chromatic half steps. Something like that, and then it's just those are interesting ways of working on it to help you get that smoothness. Going on, in the next bar, we have a sextuplet where you have dots under a slur. A lot of people are not sure what dots under a slur mean. If you have a slur with just 1 dot at the end, the rule is that you slur everything. You don't tongue the last note, you just kind of clip it. When you have multiple dots under a slur, you do articulate them, just not as short as you normally would if there was no slur. If there was no slur, I might play. But that's too short and too much. So I think I would try to play it with a softer tongue, maybe use da, 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 da. And then in the next bar, you have real staccato notes, but still, because we're in a slow tempo, never overdo it. And this is the place where the district band stuff ends. So notice that in the bar with the, you can, if you play the staccato notes nicely with a little lift, you can kind of sneak breaths after those if you need it. And at the end of the next bar, just be careful. It looks like all the notes are 16th notes, but the last group of 6 is really 2 triplets. You're playing. And then you have at the beginning of the next bar, you have an F sharp 16th followed by a 16th rest. Whenever you have a rest that's not on the beat, basically its function is to shorten the note in front of it. So you can just play, think of that F sharp as if it were a 8th note with a dot on it. So it would just be, instead of, it's, and then for those of you who are going on and preparing all of this for the All-State auditions, it's pretty straightforward. In the middle of the next line, you have a C sharp trill, and then in the line after that, there is a turn. So here, with the C sharp trill, make sure you're using the first trill key and not the second, because it's the wrong note, and that would not be good. In the next line, the turn that you have, it looks complicated, but if you look back to the 3rd bar, we already had a turn that was written out. Those 4 32nd note grace notes, that was really a turn. A turn basically is going from the upper neighbor, the turn came after a B, so the upper note would be a C, back to the main note B, then the lower neighbor A, and then back to the main note B. So in this case, we're starting on D, so we go to an E, which is the upper note, D, which is the main note, and then when we go to C, because of that little sharp there, we go to C sharp and then back to D. And again, it comes on the and of the 4th beat. In this case, however, we have 4 16ths at the beginning of the bar, and then a quarter note. Quarter note usually gets 2 beats when we're counting in 6, but in this case, because we have to fit in the turn, we only give it a beat and a half. So it's really not that hard. The next phrase is also, is a sequence where it's building, and we have a lot of grace notes. So let's look at it first without the grace notes. So on these, even though they're not marked with any kind of dynamic, I would put little tiny decrescendos under the, otherwise you might play, and we don't want to do that. The grace notes need to come before the beat. Let me show you how this works. But you also should bring them out a little bit. You have 3 grace notes, that's a lot of notes. the bar before the place where I just stopped, just so you have enough air to make sure you don't go flat, because you're supposed to get softer and retard. Just a couple of things going backwards from there. The high G coming down to the E, you should probably take your little finger off. And really work on playing those intervals as smoothly as possible. You could hear me cracking a little bit on that. And then before that, we have a sequence with trills. You might want to practice them without the trills first. And backing up a couple more bars, going up to that. This is the last bar of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th line. Just make sure all of those A's are A sharps, whether they're marked or not, or even if they're a grace note. And you might want to take your little finger off on the high E there as well to keep it from cracking. After the long fermata, we go back. It's almost like the beginning with just a few little changes.